Ambassador Tejo stood by the tall windows of the Concord Embassy, watching the human shuttle land on the designated platform. His thin fingers nervously adjusted the ceremonial sash across his chest as his aide Juwan approached with the final security reports. "Are they armed?" Tahoe asked quietly. Juwan's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Our scanners detected several metal objects on their persons. The humans claim these are ceremonial items permitted under diplomatic protocol." Tahoe's skin changed from its natural blue to a concerned purple. This was his first assignment dealing with humans, and everything about them made him uneasy. They were a new species to the Galactic Concord, discovered only 3 cycles ago at the edge of the spiral arm. "Very well. Let them enter, but double the security detail." The embassy doors slid open with a soft hiss. 5 humans entered the chamber, walking with a confidence that Tejo found unsettling. Unlike most species who approached the Concord with reverence or nervousness, the humans carried themselves as equals despite being vastly less advanced in interstellar technology. "Welcome to the Concord Embassy," Tahoe said, his translator device converting his melodic language into the harsh sounds of human speech. "We are pleased to formalize relations between our peoples." The lead human, Director Kang, stepped forward. He was shorter than Tahoe expected, with dark hair cut short and a smile that revealed too many teeth. Most disturbing was the ornate blade hanging from his belt, its handle made from some kind of animal bone. "The pleasure is ours," Kang replied, placing his hand over his chest in what Tahoe assumed was a gesture of respect. "Earth has long awaited contact with galactic civilization." Tahoe noticed how Kang's eyes, only 2 of them, strangely, scanned the room, noting exits, guard positions, and defense systems. Not the behavior of a diplomat, but of a soldier. The initial meeting proceeded smoothly enough. The humans presented gifts, artwork, music recordings, and samples of their food. Tahoe presented the standard Concord welcome package: star charts, basic technology grants, and invitations to various cultural exchange programs. During the reception that followed, Tahoe moved quietly among the humans, listening to their conversations. His translator picked up fragments that troubled him. "Firepower impressive, but their shield technology is at least 30 years behind ours. Notice their ships lack point defense systems entirely. Could retrofit our existing platforms to counter Thier." Tahoe approached Director Kang, who stood examining a display of Concord achievements in medicine and agriculture. "Your people seem very interested in our defensive capabilities," Tahoe said, keeping his tone neutral. Kang's smile never faltered. "We're a curious species, Ambassador. Everything about the Concord fascinates us. And the weapons you carry, do they also reflect your curiosity?" Tahoe gestured to the knife at Kang's hip. The human laughed, a sound that made the guards nearby tense. "It's ceremonial, a symbol of office." Kang touched the handle with practiced familiarity. "On Earth, leaders have carried blades for thousands of years. It represents our willingness to defend our people. Against what threats? The Concord offers protection to all member worlds." Something flickered in Kang's eyes. "With respect, Ambassador, Earth has stood alone for all of human history. We've learned to be prepared." "For what?" "For anything." Kang's smile returned. "It's simply our way." Later, Tahoe noticed 2 human aides examining the embassy's security doors, their hands moving over the control panels with too much interest. When they saw him watching, they quickly moved away, engaging in casual conversation, as if they hadn't been studying the embassy's most sensitive systems. That evening, after the humans had returned to their ship, Tahoe sat in his private quarters dictating his observations to his personal journal. "Humans present themselves as peaceful, yet arm themselves extensively," he recorded. "Their questions focused primarily on our defensive capabilities rather than cultural exchange or trade opportunities. They carry weapons even in diplomatic settings and show unusual interest in our security systems." Juwan entered with the day's data collection. "Their ship maintains active scanning protocols at all times. This violates 3 different Concord regulations for visiting vessels. Tahoe's skin darkened further. Have they scanned anything sensitive? Nothing beyond what's publicly available, but their persistence is concerning. Tahoe moved to the window, watching the lights of the human ship glowing against the night sky. There's something they're not telling us, Juan. No species arms themselves so thoroughly without cause. Either they face threats we don't know about, or they are the threat, Juan finished quietly. I must understand their motivation before recommending full diplomatic integration. Tahoe decided. Tomorrow, request access to their historical archives. If we want to know why humans are so heavily armed, we need to understand what shaped them. As he watched the human ship, Tahoe noticed its defensive systems were active, unusual for a diplomatic vessel in friendly space. It was as if they expected an attack at any moment. What are you afraid of? He whispered to the distant ship. And should we be afraid of it too? The data room hummed with quiet energy as Tahoe and Juan reviewed the historical archives provided by the humans. The curved walls displayed countless images and video clips from Earth's past. Tahoe's 4 eyes blinked rapidly, struggling to process the violent scenes before him. Their entire history is warfare, Tahoe told Juan, his voice soft with disbelief. Not merely against other humans, but against their environment itself. The main screen showed early humans with primitive spears facing predators twice their size. The small, hairless beings seemed impossibly fragile against such threats, yet they stood their ground. As Tahoe advanced the timeline, the weapons grew more sophisticated, from stone axes to metal swords, from simple bows to projectile weapons that could kill from great distances. Look at this, Juan said, pulling up a comparison chart. Most species evolve either as predators or prey. The predator species rarely develop advanced technology because they don't need tools to hunt. The prey species usually develop stealth or speed, not weapons. But humans began as prey but became apex predators through tool use. That's exceedingly rare in galactic development patterns. Tahoe rubbed his elongated fingers together, a gesture of concern among his people. This explains their constant readiness, but not their current level of armament. They've eliminated their natural predators. They've established global peace for over 50 years by their calendar. Yet they maintain enough weapons to destroy their planet several times over. He advanced to footage of modern human combat exercises. Soldiers moved through training courses with practiced efficiency, firing weapons with casual precision. These aren't ceremonial demonstrations, Tahoe noted. They train constantly, even during peacetime. Perhaps they simply never outgrew their evolutionary paranoia, Juan suggested, adjusting her translator as it struggled with the human military terminology. Tahoe stared at the images of human warships being constructed in orbital facilities. Or perhaps, he said quietly, they know something we don't. The door to the data room slid open, and Director Kang entered with 2 human assistants. Tahoe quickly switched the display to show Earth art and culture instead of military history. Ambassador Tahoe. Kang greeted him with the typical human smile that showed too many teeth. I hope our historical archives are proving informative. Very much so, Tahoe replied carefully. Your species has a resilient history. Kang laughed. That's a diplomatic way of saying we've been fighting since we first stood upright. Does it concern you? Tahoe considered lying but decided against it. It raises questions about humanity's readiness for peaceful integration with other species. Fair enough, Kang nodded. But consider this. Every advancement in human history, from medicine to space travel, has roots in our competitive nature. The same drive that created weapons created vaccines and starships. After the humans left, Tahoe returned to the military files, focusing on more recent history. Their weapons development accelerated dramatically after their first detection of signals from space. He noted to Juan. Before they even knew other intelligent life existed, they began preparing for conflict with it. Is that not logical? Many species experience fear of the unknown. but most respond with attempts at communication or enhanced observation. Humans immediately developed planetary defense systems and expanded their military capabilities. Why? 3 days later, Taiho presented his findings to his superiors. Director Hyun, the regional coordinator for species integration, listened with obvious impatience as Taiho outlined his concerns. With respect, Ambassador, Hyun interrupted, her skin patterns displaying annoyance. Your focus on human military history is misplaced. Their technological innovations are what matter. Their medical advancements alone justify bringing them into the Concord. Director, they maintain active military forces larger than 17 Concord species combined, Taiho countered. Their ship designs prioritize weapon systems over all other considerations. Should we not understand why before welcoming them into our alliance? Hyun waved a dismissive hand. All young species have their quirks. The Mortellians couldn't stop building underwater cities even after they evolved lungs. The Vex continued ritual cannibalism for 3 centuries after joining the Concord. Humans like weapons. They'll outgrow it. After the meeting, Taiho returned to his quarters, unsatisfied. On his personal terminal, he accessed restricted files about Earth that weren't included in the public archives. What he found disturbed him further. Humans had developed simulation theory centuries ago, the philosophical concept that reality itself might be a constructed program rather than base existence. Most species discovered this idea eventually, but humans had taken it seriously enough to develop detection systems for reality anomalies. Taiho stared at the designs for human quantum observation devices. They weren't just weapons for use against other physical beings. Some seemed designed to defend against threats that existed outside conventional understanding of space-time. What are you preparing for? He whispered to the empty room. That night, Taiho couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the humans' earliest myths, stories of gods and monsters that existed beyond the physical world. Every ancient human culture had tales of beings that could manipulate reality itself. Most species had similar myths, but humans had never stopped believing in them on some level. They had simply transformed their supernatural fears into scientific preparation. Taiho wasn't convinced by Director Hyun's dismissal. Something about human behavior suggested they weren't merely paranoid. They were ready. The question was, ready for what? In the quiet of the university's visiting dignitary office, Ambassador Taiho sat across from Professor Do-hyun, a small, elderly human with silver hair and eyes that seemed too sharp for his age. Rain pattered against the windows of the Earth building, creating a gentle background rhythm to their conversation. Thank you for meeting with me, Professor, Taiho said. I understand you specialize in theoretical physics and philosophy. Among other things, Do-hyun said with a smile. He adjusted his glasses, square frames that sat somewhat crookedly on his nose. Though I admit I'm curious why a Concord ambassador would request a meeting with an old academic like me. Taiho had spent weeks arranging this meeting, away from official channels. Director Hyun would not have approved, but Taiho needed answers that weren't in the official human records. I've been studying human history, Taiho explained. Particularly your species' relationship with weapons and defense systems. There seems to be a disconnect between your peaceful diplomatic stance and your military readiness. Ah, Do-hyun nodded. And you think philosophy might explain this better than military history? I believe there may be deeper reasons for human behavior than what appears in your official records. The professor leaned back in his chair, studying Taiho with those piercing eyes. Then he stood up and walked to a small device on the wall. Do you mind if I disable the recording systems? What I'm about to share isn't classified, but it's not something we typically discuss in diplomatic settings. Taiho felt a ripple of concern move through his skin, but he nodded. Please proceed. After pressing several buttons, Do-hyun returned to his seat. Many human philosophers have proposed we live in a simulation, what we call a simulacrum. Not merely a theoretical exercise, but a working hypothesis many take quite seriously. Taiho blinked his 4 eyes in sequence, a sign of confusion in his species. I'm familiar with the concept. Many advanced civilizations eventually consider it. But what does this have to do with human military development? Do-hyun's face grew more serious. Some believe that if our reality is programmed, it could be hacked, invaded. Many of our defense initiatives aren't designed merely against alien threats, but against potential breaches in reality itself. Tahoe merely laughed, but something in the professor's expression stopped him. The human wasn't joking, nor did he appear to be suffering from delusions. He was stating what he believed to be fact. You're suggesting humans arm themselves against reality failures. Not failures, Do-hyun corrected. Intrusions. Think of it this way. If our universe is a program, there must be something outside that program. Something that could potentially access or alter our reality from the outside. This sounds more like religion than science, Tahoe said carefully. The line between advanced science and religion has always been thin, Do-hyun replied. But we have observed phenomena that support the theory. The professor activated a small device on his desk, and a holographic display appeared between them. It showed star patterns and energy readings that Tahoe didn't recognize. For centuries, humans have documented anomalies in space-time, areas where physics behaves incorrectly. Most scientists once dismissed these as measurement errors or natural phenomena we didn't yet understand. But the patterns became too consistent to ignore. Tahoe studied the display with growing unease. The Concorde has observed similar anomalies, but classified them as natural phenomena. Perhaps they are, Do-hyun acknowledged. But what if they're not? What if they're evidence of something outside our reality, occasionally touching it? The rain grew heavier outside, drumming against the windows. Tahoe felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. Ambassador, humans evolved on a dangerous planet with many predators. We learned to prepare for threats before they materialized. This instinct has kept us alive as a species. And you believe there's a threat outside reality itself. Do-hyun shrugged. We don't know, but we've observed enough to be concerned. Enough to prepare, just in case. After the meeting, Tahoe walked through the rain back to his embassy shuttle, his mind troubled. He had come seeking rational explanations for human behavior, and instead found theories that seemed like madness. Yet the professor hadn't appeared mad. He had spoken with the calm certainty of someone discussing established facts. Over the next several days, Tahoe couldn't stop thinking about the human's words. He requested access to Concorde astronomical records, focusing on the anomalies Do-hyun had mentioned. In the secure data room of the embassy, Tahoe spent hours reviewing centuries of astronomical observations. What he found disturbed him deeply. There were indeed patterns in the anomalies, patterns that defied known physics. And these patterns occurred most frequently near human space. More concerning, the Concorde had noted these anomalies, but had never investigated them thoroughly. They were simply classified as unexplained natural phenomena and filed away. But humans had not ignored them. Hidden in their scientific databases, Tahoe found thousands of studies on these anomalies, dating back hundreds of years. The humans had been tracking and analyzing them since long before they achieved space travel. One night, alone in the data room, Tahoe overlaid the locations of human military bases with the locations of these anomalies. The correlation was nearly perfect. Humans had been positioning their defenses not based on traditional strategic considerations, but around these reality disturbances. What if they're right? He whispered to himself, staring at the glowing map. What if reality itself isn't secure? The next morning, Tahoe received an encrypted message from Professor Do-hyun. It contained only coordinates and a time, along with the words, "If you want to see proof." Against all protocol, Tahoe arranged a private shuttle and traveled to the coordinates without informing his superiors. They led to a small research facility in a remote mountain region. Professor Do-hyun was waiting for him at the entrance. "You came," the old human said, looking pleased, but not surprised. Not many non-humans would. "I need to understand," Tahoe replied simply. Do-hyun led him into the facility, past layers of security that seemed excessive for a civilian research station. Deep inside, they entered a circular room filled with strange equipment Tahoe didn't recognize. "This is a reality monitoring station," Do-Yun explained. "One of several hundred we've built around our solar system. We use it to detect and analyze anomalies." "And have you found anything?" Tahoe asked. Instead of answering, Do-Yun activated the main display. It showed a three-dimensional map of nearby space, with swirling patterns of energy that didn't match any natural phenomenon Tahoe had ever seen. "We recorded this 2 days ago," Do-Yun said quietly. "Watch." In the display, something moved through the energy patterns. Not a ship or any physical object, but a disturbance in the patterns themselves, as if something was pushing through the fabric of reality. "What is that?" Tahoe whispered. "We don't know," Do-Yun admitted, "but it's getting more frequent. And it's getting closer." Tahoe fell into bed exhausted after 18 hours of reviewing the data Professor Do-Yun had shared. The images of reality distortions haunted him, but fatigue quickly pulled him into deep sleep. He dreamed of cracks in the sky, of things reaching through from somewhere else, things with too many angles and impossible shapes. The emergency alarms tore him from sleep. Harsh red lights pulsed across his quarters as the embassy's AI announced, "Alert status Alpha. All diplomatic personnel report to secure stations." Tahoe stumbled to his feet, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly to adjust to the light. He grabbed his formal robe and communication device before rushing into the corridor. Embassy staff ran in all directions, their skin colors shifting to alarmed patterns of yellow and red. "What's happening?" he asked a security officer. "Unknown phenomenon at the Concord Central Hub," the officer replied, her voice tight with fear. "You're needed in the command center immediately." In the embassy's command center, chaos reigned. The main view screen showed impossible images. Space itself seemed to fold and tear near the Concord Central Hub. The massive station that served as the headquarters for the diplomatic body was surrounded by a strange distortion, as if reality was being crumpled like paper. "Report," Tahoe demanded, taking his position at the central console. "The phenomenon appeared 20 minutes ago," said Juan, who had arrived before him. "It's growing rapidly. Concord Defense Forces. All defensive systems are non-responsive," reported the panicked communications officer, a young male whose skin had gone almost white with fear. "Whatever it is, our weapons pass through it as if it's not there. Energy beams disappear into it. Physical projectiles vanish on contact." Tahoe stared at the screen, a cold dread settling in his stomach. This was exactly what Professor Do-Yun had warned about, a breach in reality itself. "Are there any ships nearby that might assist?" he asked. As if in answer to his question, the sensor operator called out, "Multiple vessels dropping out of faster-than-light travel. They're human ships." On the screen, a fleet of sleek human vessels appeared, moving with surprising speed toward the distortion. They were unlike any human military ships Tahoe had seen before, their hulls covered in strange patterns that hurt his eyes when he looked directly at them. "They're deploying something around the breach," Juan reported, zooming in on the human activity. The human ships released dozens of small devices that positioned themselves in a precise formation around the tear in space. A communication officer announced, "We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. They're calling these reality anchors. Open a channel to the human commander," Tahoe ordered. The screen shifted to show Director Kang, now dressed in what appeared to be military attire rather than diplomatic clothing. Behind him, humans moved with practiced efficiency around a command center far more advanced than anything they had shown the Concord. "Ambassador Tahoe," Kang acknowledged, his face grim. "I apologize for the deception, but we needed to assess the situation before revealing our capabilities." "What is happening?" Tahoe demanded. "What is that?" "Tear. It's what we've been expecting for generations," Kang replied. "A full-scale breach in the simulation, in reality itself. We've dealt with smaller instances before, but nothing of this magnitude. As they spoke, the human ships began to fire at the distortion. But they weren't firing conventional weapons. Instead, beams of complex patterns of light and sound emerged from their ships, creating intricate geometric shapes that somehow seemed to push against the distortion, containing it. "This is what you were preparing for," Tahoe said, understanding finally dawning. "All the weapons, all the military readiness." Kang nodded grimly. "This is why we arm ourselves, Ambassador, not for conquest, for survival against what lies beyond." Our ancestors sensed the nature of reality instinctively. They created myths about gods and monsters breaking through from other realms. As our science advanced, we realized those myths contained truth. On the screen behind Kang, Tahoe could see human technicians working frantically at stations covered in symbols he didn't recognize. "Can you stop it?" Tahoe asked. "We believe so, but we'll need the Concorde's help. The breach is larger than any we've encountered before." "What can we do?" "Our weapons have no effect." "Your weapons aren't designed for this," Kang explained. "But your sensors can help map the breach structure. We need all available data to create an effective seal." Tahoe turned to his staff. "Redirect all sensor arrays to focus on the anomaly. Share everything with the human vessels." As the embassy staff rushed to comply, smaller human craft emerged from the larger ships. They approached the breach directly, a suicidal move by any conventional military standard. "What are they doing?" Juan asked, horrified. On the screen, they could see human soldiers in specialized armor exiting the craft. Their suits glowed with the same strange energy as their ship's weapons. Each soldier carried what looked like a spear made of light, connected by a tether to their ship. "They're stabilizing the edges manually," Kang explained. "The breach requires direct intervention." As Tahoe watched, the human soldiers moved toward the breach, their weapons glowing with peculiar energy. They didn't fire projectiles or energy beams. Instead, they pressed the spears directly into the edges of the tear, and where they touched, the distortion seemed to calm, the edges becoming more defined and less chaotic. "They're not shooting at it," Juan whispered beside Tahoe. "They're patching it, like code." "Exactly," Kang said, having heard the comment. "Reality is, at its core, information. The breach is corrupted code. We're inserting corrections." The work continued for hours. Several human soldiers disappeared into the breach, their tethers snapping as they were pulled into whatever lay beyond. Tahoe watched with growing respect as the humans continued their work despite the losses, methodically containing and repairing the tear in reality. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the breach began to shrink. The reality anchors pulsed with increasing intensity, and the human soldiers backed away as the tear folded in on itself until, with a flash of light that temporarily blinded all sensors, it collapsed completely. "Breach contained," Kang announced, his voice exhausted but relieved. "For now." "For now," Tahoe repeated. "This won't be the last one, Ambassador. They're becoming more frequent, more intense. We've been fighting this battle in secret for centuries, but we can't do it alone anymore." Tahoe looked around at his staff, seeing the shock and awe on their faces as they realized the truth. Humans weren't paranoid or warmongering. They were guardians, standing watch against a threat the rest of the galaxy hadn't even recognized. "We need to speak to the Concorde High Council," Tahoe said finally. Immediately, the Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Concorde buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from 500 worlds filled the tiered seating, their varied forms creating a living tapestry of galactic diversity. At the center podium stood Ambassador Tahoe, his blue skin now marked with the gold patterns that signified his elevated status. 1 month had passed since the reality breach near the Concorde hub. 1 month of frantic diplomacy, classified briefings, and paradigm-shifting revelations. Now the full Concorde would hear the truth. "Esteemed representatives," Tahoe began, his voice amplified throughout the chamber. I stand before you to present findings that will forever change our understanding of the universe and our place within it. The massive screens around the chamber displayed images of the breach event, carefully edited to protect the most sensitive details. Even the sanitized version caused gasps and murmurs throughout the assembly. For millennia, the Concorde has classified space-time anomalies as natural phenomena of little concern. We were wrong. Tahoe paused, letting his words sink in. These anomalies are breaches in the fabric of reality itself, intrusions from something outside our universe. The chamber erupted in shocked conversations. Species with religious traditions saw confirmation of ancient beliefs. Scientific minds struggled to process implications that challenged fundamental theories. Most importantly, Tahoe continued when order returned, we must recognize that one species among us has been fighting these intrusions long before joining the Concorde. The humans. Director Kang and a small delegation of humans entered the chamber from a side door. They wore simple gray uniforms with a new emblem, a shield surrounding a stylized double helix. Humans don't arm themselves despite being peaceful, Tahoe concluded. They arm themselves precisely because they value peace and existence itself. For millennia, they've served as unwitting guardians against incursions we never recognized. Director Hyun, who had dismissed Tahoe's concerns weeks earlier, now stood to address the council. The Science Directorate has verified Ambassador Tahoe's findings. The breach was not an isolated incident. Our new human allies have shared records of similar events throughout their history, dating back to their pre-industrial age. The next hours were filled with questions, explanations, and heated debate. Some representatives feared the implications. Others questioned if humans could be trusted with this responsibility. But as evidence mounted and the humans patiently answered every question, resistance faded. By day's end, the Concorde voted unanimously to support human defense initiatives throughout the galaxy. Resources were allocated. Research priorities shifted. Specialized human teams were dispatched to monitor weak points in reality across known space. Later that week, Tahoe stood on an observation deck of the Concorde station, watching human technicians install monitoring equipment. The devices resembled the reality anchors used during the breach, though smaller and designed for detection rather than containment. Director Kang joined him at the viewport, his formal diplomatic attire replaced by the practical uniform of the newly formed Reality Defense Corps. Your people work quickly, Tahoe observed. We've had lots of practice, Kang replied, though it's nice to do it openly now, without hiding behind diplomatic cover. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the stars. A month ago, they had been suspicious counterparts in a diplomatic dance. Now they were allies against a threat greater than either had faced before. I still don't fully understand how you knew, Tahoe admitted. How humans recognized this threat when more advanced civilizations missed it entirely. Kang considered the question. We didn't know exactly, he said finally. But throughout our history, we've had intuitions, dreams, stories that seemed like fiction but contained truth. Our greatest scientific discoveries often began as what we call science fiction. Stories predicted reality breaches, not directly, but across all human cultures, we told tales of things breaking through from outside, gods, monsters, visitors from other dimensions. We created myths about the boundaries of reality long before we had the science to understand them. Tahoe's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, processing this. Your weapons make more sense now, but the scale of your preparations suggests more than mere intuition. The first documented breach we could confirm scientifically occurred in 1908 in a remote region called Tunguska, Kang explained. It was small and sealed itself naturally, but it destroyed hundreds of square kilometers of forest. Later breaches became more frequent, more persistent, and larger, Tahoe added. Yes, we believe whatever exists beyond our reality is becoming more interested in ours. A human technician approached, handed Kang a data tablet, then returned to work. Kang studied it briefly before returning his attention to Tahoe. The defense grid is 70% complete, he said. "Another week, and we'll have basic coverage of all major population centers." "And the weapons? Will you maintain your military now that the Concord understands your purpose?" Kang smiled. "Better to have them, and not need them, than need them, and not have them. That's an old human saying. Now you understand why." Tahom nodded, watching as reality itself was reinforced by the very species he had once feared would threaten it. 6 months later, the system detected another breach forming near a populated world. This time, human and Concord forces responded together. The breach was contained in hours rather than days, with minimal damage and no casualties. In his personal quarters that night, Taiho recorded an entry in his journal. "Today I watched species that once distrusted each other fight side by side to preserve the very fabric of existence. The humans have given us a precious gift, not just protection from an unimaginable threat, but a common purpose that transcends our differences." He paused, considering his next words carefully. Perhaps this is why humans evolved as they did, not to conquer or destroy, but to stand guard at the boundaries of reality. Their weapons were never meant for us, but for what waits beyond the simulacrum we call existence. I once feared their readiness for war. Now I am grateful for it. The end.